Yes, we're back. Yes, we're back, and we now have in our midst Colonel Najim Shoba, retired, who is a counter-terrorism expert. Great to have you on the show, sir.
It's a pleasure having you. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, we're going to get you to hit the ground running in a manner of speaking. You probably have been following the situation in Jos, and we've had extensive conversation with the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Mr. Project, who is here with us. And we want to ask you, just yesterday, there was a lift in the curfew that was placed in some area in Jos. Do you think lifting it so quickly is a good idea?
Yes, lifting it so quickly is a good idea because some of the characteristics of curfew imposition were not followed when the curfew was in place. In the first instance, where you impose a curfew in an area, a community or a state, the community itself must feel the impact of that curfew because one, there will be a restriction of movement. Two, the police are no more in charge, and there will be instant judgment of unruly culprits that is seen to violate the issue of curfew. And in an area of a curfew, there will be constant patrolling of the streets, the areas, the communities, and culprits or curfew breakers are brought to judgment instantly. But if you look at the imposition of curfew in the past, you discover that people are just going about their normal life. They are not feeling the impact of the curfew. And still under the issue of that curfew, you still have terrorists or bad boys or whatever name you want to call them. I'm not going to call them Boko Haram because the trend have changed. So if I address them as terrorists, I think we go by that name as per my own definition. You discover that they still come up to strike. Whereas under the imposition of curfew and in a curfew situation, you are not supposed to see anybody carrying arms. You are not supposed to see a strange face. You are not supposed to be somebody who is not part of the security agents on the streets. And if you see such a person is supposed to be brought to book. And I'm very much aware in the military, in the army and the infantry to which I belong, we have surveillance equipment. When curfew are imposed, you place those surveillance equipment on the high ground to monitor movement of human beings and animals. And once such is detected, there is always a response force in place to check or counter-check them.
Well, Mr. Project just mentioned that we're militarizing civilians. Do you think that the soldiers should be the people we should be sending out to fight terrorism in Nigeria?
Well, if you go to advanced countries, let me take the case of Germany, where we have their SGS-9. It's a bridge between the military and the police.
During the military, what is SGS-9?
SGS-9 is a special riot force by the German government, which was put in place to counter terrorist activities without inviting the military, and that has gone beyond the control of the army. So, if you take a look at that, if a state of emergency is declared, of course the military is the next person you put in place. Because one, the Nigerian Constitution of 1999 said the Nigerian police is saddled with the responsibility of maintaining law and order. So the law and order are broken down. You have imposed a state of emergency, so the army should come in. So the citizens of that community should be ready to go with the military. So if it is an issue of you militarizing the state within the period of the curfew, it is simply because the community cannot maintain law and order. The police are no more in charge. So if the military move in, then the citizens should equally cut their coat, not according to their size, but according to their cloth.
Okay. I'd like to just chip in here. You see, what really happens in our own experience is the fact that when you deploy the military, command issues emerge. The police are used to maintaining internal security. In the past, the experience was such that there's always a quick response by the military. They intervene, they bring order, and they move out. But what we're beginning to witness throughout Nigeria is a situation where they remain on the ground throughout and begin to take over police duties, even in peace situations.
Okay, let me come in there.
What I'm just trying to say that you begin to see sometimes even interagency conflicts emerge as a result of that. Okay. Investigations are stalled as a result of certain normal investigative procedures are completely distorted sometimes, so that you find it sometimes very difficult to get culprits to book in the true sense of the word. What I'm trying to say is that there's no clarity. I like the emphasis he made about the German arrangement, where you find a non-military, but a glorious mixed bag of forces that is over and above sometimes even the military, to deal with terrorism challenges. But what we're increasingly having is a situation where, because the military has also been used to being involved in taking political decisions in the past and taking charge of affairs, and once they are drafted onto the streets to take command, they also have the tendency of interpreting that as an opportunity to be in a position of political command. Now, the civil authority itself also feels as if something is happening. We've had occasions in the past where a general officer commanding, who was put in charge of the task force in Jos, the first statement he made is that the police must carry ID cards to move on the streets. We've had that experience in the past. So, and it completely modeled up the whole idea of interagency harmony and working together to address a problem. Now, we've moved away from that, and we're gradually improving on how to deal with this challenge. The terrorist threat is becoming something that I'm even happy that gradually we are witnessing deliberate attempts, even at the national level, to set up terrorist anti-terror squads. The police has a wing now that is emerging in that direction. The army is also interested in the anti-terror, tactics, and they are engaging on those trainings.
Sorry, just to break in quickly. Do you think that what Colonel Shebo just described in terms of what should be the situation when you place a curfew, is that what happens?
Let me throw more light on what he has just
just one second. Is that what happens? Do you see a situation where it's total blackout during the period of curfew? Nobody is allowed to walk around.
We have had occasions in Plateau State where we declared a 24-hour curfew, no movement.
None whatsoever.
And but within the midst of that curfew, like you said, some people were able to find their way to attack villages. So what it then means is that you begin to hear issues about inadequate personnel to police the ground. You hear all that. You hear of late, alerts being given to. You've had occasions where we had a huge debate.
So if you have a 24-hour curfew, how would anybody then be able to go out to attack people?
These are the questions, and that's why you begin to hear issues of compromises, duplicity, some networking behind the scenes, connivance, creating an opportunity for the conflict to get to another level. These are some of the things.
Let me contribute a bit to what my colleague have just said. When you are talking of the issue of imposition of curfew and the military takes over, in the process of internal security operations, when you are going to suppress a crowd, you are going to suppress a terrorist, conventionally, the first response force is the conventional police. And the conventional police moves in with their baton to check the crowd, give them awareness, grave warning, take pictures, read riot act, tell them what could happen if they refuse to go to where they are supposed to go, tell them what will happen if they violate any of the laws. If the citizen reviews, fine, the ground is building up, then the armed policemen will come in. When the armed policemen come in, they assume responsibility. Then in the process of doing that, if the armed policemen could not contain the situation, of course the military will be invited. And there's a procedure.
Colonel, we're talking about a curfew that is imposed and the JTF is in place.
Yes.
And yet people find their way around to go and commit atrocities.
I will get there. I just want to have a where he was talking of military taking over, and there's no demarcation between the military and the police, and the military takes over and directed that every policeman should carry an ID card. I just want to clear that aspect of why it is so. Okay. It is so because if you invite the military to take over from the police, when the military takes over, the police pulls back to do other police duties. It becomes the responsibility of the police to patrol those other areas that the military could not keep in place. Then the military had to face the existing situation, restore normalcy, then they pull back and police return back to that position. Then the military carry their luggage back to the barrack and return the duty back to the police.
The picture I've painted, that dealing with the problem means it's a quick response.
Yes.
Moving back is also supposed to be a quick response.
Yes.
In the whole experience, as far as we are seeing all over northern Nigeria today, there's no plan to pull back.
We can't pull back because the situation is still in place.
No, for as long as that's the conflict trap that we're finding ourselves. A situation where rather than pull back, the emphasis is that we must remain on the streets because the situation is getting worse. Okay. Now, the first question you must ask, you came to make the situation better and it's getting worse. And you're supposed to pull out. And you can't pull out because it is getting worse. Now, so there's no possibility of any pull out. Okay, in the true sense of the word, because the situation is supposed to de-escalate, but it's escalating in your presence. Now, who else do you call to deal with the challenge?
The army is containing that situation now. For example, if you take a look at the crisis in Jos now, last week, about 5,500 inhabitants have been evacuated from certain villages. After that evacuation, with due respect, you discover that there is no cases of reported armed banditry. Again, after that evacuation, number one. Number two, if you take a look at the issue of the RPG-7 that was fired last Friday into a mosque, which killed a boy of 8 years old, 3 people were arrested. But you discover that the following morning, there was another repeated case of 3 cartridges of RPG-7 being fired. What I'm emphasizing is that terror does not grow in a vacuum. The terrorist group are within the community. They live within the community, they grow there, they dine and live with them. So if you set the soldiers to go out, a terrorist does not have an axis. He could come from anywhere. They don't have selection of targets. Anybody could be their target. All what they want to do is to just discredit the government and let the people believe that they are no more in control. Let the people believe that they should sympathize with the terrorist group. Let them know that the government cannot offer the protection of life and property as is expected on the part of the government. But the solution is not the issue of army alone. We have to take a look at what is the role of the government. What is the role of the group? What is the role of the individual? Corporate organizations and private security companies, what role do they play? It's not a one-man show. It's all hands on deck affair.
Okay.
So, therefore, if the army is in charge, definitely the command responsibility should lie with the army. When the army is going to pull out, the police should come in. When the police are pulling out, they restore normalcy back to the state government, and police government take over the responsibility of that command.
Colonel Shuba, from your experience, do you think that military intelligence is working in synergy with the police intelligence to ensure that this does not continue to happen?
Well, if you take a look at it, a joint ops room has been established.
Yes.
And when a joint ops room is established, which I worked in, you have the army, you have the police, you have the SSS, you have other paramilitary organizations, which I don't need to disclose their identity here. All of them join in the same control room. They acquire information, analyze this information, and pass them to the users on the field, who in essence use them.
Now, and I want to just chip in here.
Okay.
It is in such kind of joint ops room that you find fifth columnists.
Yes.
That you find people who leak security situations, where you are planning a raid in a location, and then before you get there, everybody has vanished from that place because somebody else has told them to get out of this. So this is the networking that seems to be emerging. A situation where you are likely to even find, like people say, people who are sympathetic to the militant groups outside to give out even information that will make even security management even more difficult.
That is a good.
I'm sorry, Colonel. We're running out. We're running out of time now.
Okay.
So we have to close. Okay. So in closing, is there a way out of this jail in which we have found ourselves, on a national level and on a local level, with regard to Plateau specifically?
Yeah, I do not think we should always say that there is a Plateau crisis. There is a Nigerian crisis on the ground. Plateau may have served as a good staging post for those who are initiating this conflict to engulf the rest of Nigeria. And unless Nigeria looks at it as a case that requires a collective approach to dealing with it, rather than isolate the state as a problem, because that approach has a way of affecting the kind of solutions that come out in the process. Now, there must be an increasing synergy and partnership among agencies, among tiers and levels of government, both at the national, state and local, so that you will understand that government institutions are supposed to respond as government institutions, not one government institution arguing against another government institution. But, you know, what you find is that, look, findings by states should be taken seriously at the national level, not to be treated as isolated cases, right? Like we have done commissions of inquiry, findings, recommendations have been made. Nobody cares because it's a state thing. And then even advisory bodies that have been set by the federal government, they have been treated more important than even clear-cut investigative efforts that have been made even by the state. And this creates complications in the management of a crisis situation in the state. So I want to see that kind of harmony emerge. And to some extent, leaders in most other states adjoining areas of conflict should not be quick to make careless statements about what is going on in those states, because they do so from the perspective of the judgments of the external person who doesn't even know what the internal dynamics are on the ground. And those, sometimes they escalate the conflict the more rather than de-escalate.
Colonel.
Yes, madam. In addition to what my colleague have just said, you see, we should play down in the case of terrorists because terrorists do need sympathy. We should be able to leave the military in place and let the reign of power, the absolute command of the operation, rest with the military. And that being the case, just last week, the elders of Plateau State government, retired senior military officers, civil servants, past state governors, serving and military personnel, all of them have a joint conference. They have deliberated on the way forward. Now that they have done that, that will be passed to Army headquarters. Army headquarters will pass it in form of command to the field operational commanders. And once that is done, it is now left for the field commanders, the police, and the SSS to have a synergy where both of them could work together and ensure that the forces are being pushed ahead so as to be able to eradicate act of terrorism. Because the one thing is, yes, Plateau State today, Plateau State could go into peace now. The next thing you find out in the next 1 week, they say the thing have started in Lagos. So it's a national issue. It's not restricted to one particular area. And because the terrorists don't have a front, it is all hand on deck. The government, the corporate organizations, the individuals, and of course, private security organizations. We should be able to share information. We should be able to pass information to the police. And that is why we're emphasizing on what we call community policing.
Yes.
So,
okay. Thank you very much, Colonel Najim Shobal, retired counter-terrorist expert. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, sir.
And we want to say thank you very much, Mr. Gang Pajak, the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Plateau State. But just before you go, one quick one. What is the statistics, just to put it in perspective for Nigerians, statistics of people that have lost their lives as of today through the course of all of this? Are we talking hundreds or thousands?
There are moments where you begin to lose touch with figures, because these are human beings.
Are we in the region of hundreds?
They are names. You're talking about children. You're talking about women. I would rather not even focus on numbers. I want to say,
no, just to give perspective to help Nigerians.
Human life.
Lost counts.
Lost counts.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We've been talking about the violence in Jos and looking for solutions and wondering if there is going to be a solution. But obviously, there will definitely have to be a solution so that this does not spread to other parts of the country. So we want to say thank you to our guest on this show. We will not be going away for too long, just a couple of minutes for some messages, and then we'll be back. Don't go away.